Boots and pants and boots and pants and boots and pants and boots and pants and boom. All right, next up on deck, we have Random Random Man with his review of the movie Hustlers. What? You expected something else with this intro? Shame on you. All right, RRM, show us what you got. What is up, everybody? Random Man here, bringing you my review for Hustlers. Based on New York Magazine's 2015 article, The Hustlers at Scores, written by Jessica Pressler, the plot of this crime dramedy basically follows a group of strippers in New York City who begin to embezzle money by drugging stock traders and CEOs who visit their club. Going into this movie, I gotta be honest in saying that I really wasn't looking forward to seeing it prior to its TIFF premiere. I thought it looked like total and utter trash, and then when it premiered at that said festival last week actually, it started to garner some strong buzz, particularly for the performances and the handling of its subject matter. On top of its solid reviews, I began looking more into the film and saw that it was written and directed by Lorraine Scafaria, whose previous work I've actually seen some of. She wrote Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, which I really enjoyed, and she wrote and directed her directorial debut, Seeking a Friend for the End of the World, which I also really enjoyed. And seeing most of the cast as well, I did like some of their past work as well, so it got me hooked in the end, on top of everything else, to go see this film. Starting out with the cast and their performances, we have Constance Wu as Destiny/Dorothy, who becomes a stripper to support herself and her grandmother. Now, I thought her performance was outstanding here. There is a pretty clear motivation as to why she has turned into this line of work, and the interactions she has between herself and the other women and the growth that she has in turning to more devious methods later on make the narrative engaging as we mainly see it through her eyes as our protagonist of sorts. And then that gets further fleshed out with the introduction of Ramona, played by Jennifer Lopez. She is the stripper that literally takes Constance Wu's Destiny/Dorothy under her wing, as it's made literally clear when both of them are having a smoke on the roof of the strip club, and she literally has her under her big fur coat. Now, I've always been a fan of J-Lo as a singer, and I think she has a great voice. In terms of her as an actress, she's been here and there with the projects that she's been in, and she's the one who's been consistently singled out for praise for her performance in Hustlers. I have to 100% agree with all of the glowing reviews that she has gotten for her turn here, as she gives her best performance since her 1997 turn in the biopic Selena, where she played the title role of Selena Quintanilla Perez. She owns this role, not just within the physicality of her being a veteran stripper, she still looks gorgeous at 50 years old, by the way, but also with her being the head honcho of this phishing scheme in embezzling money out of these rich Wall Street dudes so that she's able to get more for herself and also for the strippers that she is working with. And as I said, she gives her best performance since Selena here, but I would actually also argue that she gives her best film performance to date, period. This female-led ensemble has a stacked supporting cast, with the most notable players here being Julia Stiles, who plays the journalist who is writing the article in which this movie is based on. I believe that she is a substitute for the author. Either way, I thought she was very good here. There's also Keke Palmer as Mercedes and Lily Reinhardt as Annabelle. Both of them are strippers who join in with Dorothy and Ramona in this huge scheme to embezzle a bunch of money, and I thought they did very fine jobs for what they had to do. And then there are other known names here like Lizzo and Cardi B, two rappers who have blown up in recent years, the latter of which was a stripper in real life. She's very proud of that, and also participated in some actions similar to what the main characters of this film do to a bunch of these Wall Street guys. And yeah, that's gotten her into a bit of real life controversy. Either way, I personally cannot stand Cardi B. Like, I'm not a fan of her music. But I've got to say, she did make me chuckle a couple of times here and there. Her, Lizzo, and other names like Trace Lysette only have about 5 to 10 minutes-ish of screen time, so they're not the main focus here. The main focus here is Constance Wu and Jennifer Lopez, and I think that these two give the most standout performances of the film. The writing of this film, and in turn directing by Lorene Scafaria, make it clear with its influences and structure to create a film that is very Martin Scorsese inspired, I would say. This movie, in fact, was supposed to originally be directed by Martin Scorsese, and it's pretty obvious that Scafaria has done her homework in watching a bunch of Scorsese films that make this movie look and feel like one. I think in particular, The Wolf of Wall Street is one that makes this movie very close to, in it being about some not so clean individuals who are trying to get money their own way, and then there are other things around here that connected to some real world situations. As for Hustler specifically, this movie takes place between 2007 and 2015. So it's very recent events that do frame this movie. It's also told in flashback, with Julia Stiles' reporter character interviewing Constance Wu's character in between a lot of the main portions of this narrative as it progresses, so that we fill in the blanks as it goes. And with this movie, as I mentioned, being inspired by a lot of Scorsese work, it's also a mixture of a bunch of other different films, such as The Big Short, it having to do with the 2008 financial crisis, which has a big part in this movie, and also Magic Mike, not just because it has exotic dancers at the helm, but also because it's about a similar subject matter that goes deeper with who these characters are and what their motivations are in what they do. So with this mixture of a bunch of different films, it creates a story that is very engaging from the start. And what makes it more particularly noteworthy is that it is told from the female lens of Scafaria herself, and through these female characters that are ones that are relatable, specifically with Wu and Lopez and what they do, their chemistry with one another. I really dug what bond that they had in a little sister, big sister kind of vibe, or even a mother-daughter kind of vibe of sorts, with Lopez being the one who is at the helm. And that in turn creates some surprise emotion across this film, which I didn't expect this movie to have a lot of, as the perspective here makes it clear that it's not necessarily glamorizing the lifestyle that these women partake in. It is shown in a very stunning degree with how it's shot, with its cinematography and all the neon-drenched visuals here and there, but also with how this is essentially a big fun time going in the fast lane, like a lot of male-led movies like these, specifically a bunch of crime films from the 1980s and the 1990s, have done for years and years and years, but we usually don't get to see it from the female perspective, and I thought that was kind of refreshing to see here. It also mostly balances out its tone to a degree where, yes, this is a dramatic film, but also it has bursts of comedy that do keep the energy up, and that's what I ultimately dug about this movie the most, on top of the performances. In the way it went, it had me utterly entertained, not just by the eye candy, but also by how the narrative really had these women going for it, owning what they were trying to go after, even though it is about them doing criminal acts in the end. But as I mentioned, this movie is akin to a lot of male-led crime movies that have shown off what they have done in order to get gratification within themselves, but then eventually consequences do occur with all of their deeds. That does lead into the biggest issue I have with the film, in that I mentioned, again, it follows the playbook of Martin Scorsese to a T, but it also does it to its own detriment as well, as the final 20 to 30 minutes-ish of this movie felt not just redundant, but also predictable in how it played out and seeing the ramifications and consequences that these characters go through, just like any other crime movie with a similar subject matter, just with men at the helm instead of women, anything like that. It felt very similar to that, but also in the way it is paced out. I did not think it was as clean as it tried showing off to be, because without giving any spoilers, despite this being inspired by a true story, it shows how it ended in almost a Hollywood-like fashion, as the whole thing was trying to make itself out to be. It also had to do with some of the characters as well. Like I've mentioned, Wu and Lopez have the most to do here, and they're the main two at the forefront of this film. But then we have other characters here, played by the likes of Keke Palmer, Lily Reinhart, and even Julia Stiles here and there, putting in some of her own perspective. We don't get much to those two specific strippers, played by Reinhardt and Palmer, in having their own motivations, which are expressed, but they aren't as fully fleshed out. Those qualms aside, though, this movie has a lot about it to like, or that I specifically liked while watching it. I already mentioned how this movie looked visually and the way it is shot, the way it sounded too, with its soundtrack going through some of the most popular songs of their given years, did make this period piece-esque kind of narrative feel all the more energetic, and also just with the way the movie is moving along at a very nice pace of about an hour and 50 minutes that I never felt drag until towards the end with its third act and it going into some familiar territory. But other than that, I have to say that Hustlers surprised me quite a bit, and then some. This is a movie that, on the surface, is a big fun time that I feel is worth watching for all of the praiseworthy elements I've mentioned. But at its core, it does go into some deeper modes that I didn't expect this movie to go into. They could have been fleshed out a little more, but like I mentioned, this movie is surrounded around a lot of influences of other films that do make this movie as entertaining as I found it to be. So with all of that, and the unique voice that this movie has breathing under it, with all of the women involved, I do have to give a little bit of a round of applause for what they're able to do here, and specifically with what is mentioned in the movie's final line in summing up its theme and message. It goes for a specific kind of one that doesn't promote what actions are being done, but it gives a sense of perspective to what these women did. If you're like me, who thought that this movie had a lot of overly exemplified and glorified nature with it and just looked like a bad time with its marketing, I would say that you should go into this film, if you're going to see it, with an open mind like I did, as I found myself surprised by more than one area with all that it encompassed. I saw this movie with my good friend Winston, and we both had similar thoughts upon leaving the theater as we were discussing the movie, and we both really enjoyed it in the end. Thanks for convincing me to head out and see this movie with you, bro. This was a fun time. In short, I thought that Hustlers was a very solid effort. I definitely recommend it. My final verdict for Hustlers is 4 out of 5 stars. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of Hustlers. Social media links in the description. Subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.